Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and see a room full of so many compassionate and caring people. And the role of clown doctors, I'd like to also just add that I was a co-founder. My other founder was the late Dr. Peter Spitzer. And Peter was a doctor that always wanted to be a clown, and I was a clown that always wanted to be a doctor. So we were a perfect combination, and I was very experienced. I used to watch Ben Casey, Dr. Kildare, Marcus Welby, MD. So I knew I was well trained for the job, and it was really interesting convincing the hospital that they should have clown doctors. And initially they just thought that we should be in the public areas and entertaining people like they would imagine clowns to do, just cheerful stuff all the time. But it was very, very quickly worked out that we were very good in the bedside, by the bedside, and also in places like, I know what you said, damn it, I wasn't meant to be funny, but in the bedside depends, Is that right?
Yep, just
Okay. All right. So we found ourselves in all kinds of places. Intensive care. We'd hand out smiles on a stick to people who were the wellest people in intensive care. We would be in the burns unit, very good to distract children while they were having skin debrided, dressings changed. It was a very painful experience, and sometimes just in situations very similar to what Terence described, you'd find yourself standing in a room of great tragedy and being an innocent bystander. And it was interesting because we were the only ones in that room who weren't involved with the medical care, basically, other than parents and friends. And it was kind of nice to have somebody that didn't have any skin in the game, so to speak. And, we went from there to doing other things. When we had clown doctors at the Royal Adelaide Women's and Children's Hospitals, and then Professor David Currow, who some of you might remember was the president of Palliative Care Australia, he had taken this role over in head of palliative care in Adelaide, in a particular section of Adelaide, Door House, and was the hospice. And he invited us along, and it wasn't really popular with the nursing population. They thought that perhaps we might be potentially lowering the tone of hospice care by being so cheerful. So, the first couple of visits were tense, and I remember coming out of a room where we were having a rollicking good time with this woman. Show me the way to go home. I cried and I want to go to bed. She was laughing and everything. And as I came out, the nursing unit manager said, "Do you think you could keep it down a little?" Because if somebody died last night and we lost another one this morning, Dr. B. Looney, me, I said, "It's not my fault." She sighed and went away, and we went on with what we were doing for the day. And then the following week, we're back there, and this woman comes in with her husband and her 9-year-old son, who was a little bit ADD, I'd think, because he was very hyperactive, and she was visiting her dad he was in these last days. He unfortunately had mesothelioma and breathing was very difficult. He was on a machine and very shallow breathing was going on, and I could see she wanted to spend time with him, so I suggested that I'll distract let's call him Andrew, for a period of time. So I took him away for 15 minutes. He was well occupied and very involved and everything. And then he started to get a little restless and wandered back to the room. And it was just a very intense time between his mum and her dad. And she sort of acknowledged, but I could kind of tell she wasn't ready to have him back in the room. So we went off and did another thing for 10 minutes. I said, "Come and look at my imaginary dog." So I showed him just a wire with a dog collar on it. And he had great fun with that, but that only lasted about 7 minutes. And then by this point, he'd had enough. He just wanted his mother, and he comes in and he's holding his crutch, like the kids. He said, and he stood at the door. He said, "Is he dead yet?" So, like, the mother just. And anyway, the room went very quiet, and you could hear the machine going. And then a voice said, "No." Not yet. And he had this absolute wonderful grin on his face because he realised that he was going very soon, but there was someone more than able to replace him. And that, in a sense, is what reincarnation is all about. And if anyone's read anything or heard anything from Alan Watts, he says, why do you want to live forever? It's really, nature and abhors a vacuum. It doesn't want to be dealing with you all the time. Just enjoy what you have and then bugger off. And let other people hold the torch for you, because you're invested in their lives. Bits of you are through the whole family. And I think that's so true, And children themselves, they just amaze me with their ability to cope with the most serious things, children with terminal illnesses. One particular child we just really loved, her name was Grace. She was 4. She had leukemia from the age of 1. So she'd spent most of her life in the hospital. It was just basically her residence, and she'd gone through 2 bone marrow transplants and, all other little dramas, and it was a constant battle, but she just dealt with it very stoically, and she became very good at attachment. All of it was going around her. She could see that her parents were suffering because they were riding this crest of this wave, trying to keep her above ground, stopping her from dying, and they were exhausted. So one day, us as clown doctors, we wander into her room and she just looks at us. And we said, "Oh, doesn't want to see the clown doctor." And then she went, so we looked at the window and her father was slumped in a chair, sitting by the window, absolutely just broken by the whole process, So we went over there and we cheered him up. He actually really enjoyed the interaction, and we left him in a lot better space than when we found him. And then we went back to her thinking that she was next, and she went. She threw us out. And look, she recovered pretty well. Things were going fine, and then 2 weeks later, I was back on shift, and I went up to the front desk. I said, "Can we go and visit?" And she said, "No, gone to heaven." Gone. She had no immune system. She got the flu and she died. That was it. Gone. It just amazes you that things like that happen. And I'm amazed also at the tenacity and the strength of these children and their families, but particularly these kids. They grow up fast. They've only got a very small amount of time in their lives, and they somehow just wise up. And another particular family, this 10-year-old girl, Joanne, she also had leukemia. I'm glad to say that when we started in 1996, the survival rate for leukemia was about 30%. And now these days, I think it's up about 70%. Would that be right, Leonie? It's pretty good, high. But unfortunately, it was a big battle with Joanne, and, most of her life was spent in the hospital, and they'd actually moved everything into her room. It was like a house in there. She had all her stuffed animals and pictures on the wall and everything like that. And unfortunately, she didn't make it. And the parents were just bereft with that because they had to go back to the room, pack everything up, and just get on with their lives. And as they were just picking their toys up and everything, they picked up her favourite pillow, and underneath was a little note from Joanne. And all it said was, "If you two take care of yourselves as well as you've taken care of me, you'll both be fine." Thank you.